Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on the 4th of July, 2016, Independence Day at 4:04, 16:04 in the afternoon Eastern Time. Let's adjust this bad boy here a touch. I'm ensconced in the north bedroom here. I thought I'd show you my Samsung TV with my HDMI cable attached. It's been a very quiet Monday here. Well, the traffic's been somewhat heavier than usual, but of course, yesterday was Sunday. Now, I read in church on Sunday at 10:30, and it's, I like the 10:30 service because I like the music, but it does get a little. Well, it's not so much it's long; it's that if you're on the platform party, you spend a lot of time standing up. In this interim, he's a fine preacher. He's a great preacher. I have no quarrels with his preaching, except for when he does the transitional, what are we going to do with our parish thing. But what he does do is, after we process in, and when you process in, at least in the Episcopal Church, people who can stand up, and they'll, as the cross passes, you'll sort of bow a bit, or whatever, whatever your particular expression of reverence is, and then he goes into this kind of, he stands up, he just, we're standing up there, we're ready to start. And then he does the announcements. Rather than walking out before the service and doing the announcements, or doing it between the readings and the communion, he does them right after you walk in. Well, people are standing up. Sometimes these things go on for about 10, 15 minutes, depending on, there's one guy in particular that sort of gives the same long canned speech about one of the outreach things we're involved in, over and over and over. And of course, always ending with the appeal for money, and it's just, and people are standing, and quite frankly, I know I'm going to be standing up there most of the service anyway, because in fact, I'm on a platform party, and you read and you stand during the communion, all that kind of thing. And it's just, the air conditioning was turned off yesterday, and normally I don't give a damn whether the air conditioning's on or not, but it was particularly warm in there yesterday. And come on, I think it's rude. I think it's inconsiderate. It's unkind, and I don't like that. There, had my say on that. I got to read. I got to do the Old Testament reading. I like to do the Old Testament readings in general, anyway, because I also like to do the prayers. But it's about Naaman coming over to get healed of leprosy by Elisha. Well, Elisha just sort of doesn't even bother go down the drive to meet the guy. He stays at his house, and he has his servant go out and tell him to go wash in the Jordan 7 times, and Naaman gets pissed off. Anyway, eventually he ends up going down and washing in the Jordan, and he's healed. Now, they always leave out the best part of the story, which is how his servant, Gehazi, Elisha's servant Gehazi, tries to scam. He does scam this guy, scarfs a couple of talents of silver and a couple of outfits of clothes from the guy. Elisha turned any gifts down. He didn't want payment for this thing, and then Elisha says, "Now you're going to have leprosy." So Gehazi, They never do that one. They always leave out. They also leave out the thing where these kids torment Elisha for being bald-headed. They run after him going, bald head, bald head, bald head. And so he has these bears come out and eat these kids, And he ate 42 kids. This bear ate 42. That's the way to deal with an unruly group of kids. So yesterday afternoon, of course, was Skype day. Skype day with Tony Pincham, and we talked for about 3.5 hours, as we often do, and I've told him a little bit about what happened at church, and we got talking about. I told him about how our organist played God of Our Fathers. That's the one that has the, ideally, if you have a trumpet player there, you can do the trumpet introduction, the da 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 da, and then God of Our Fathers, da 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 da. Well, she talked about how when she was growing up, her dad and a friend of his played the trumpet for that up in the choir loft at their church. And so she always, whenever she plays that, she always thinks of her dad and his friend playing the trumpet in her church. And she said today, and then she said this after the service during coffee hour, where she just told the story to everybody who was assembled in the room, that today she especially felt his presence there with her while she was playing. It was very moving account. And then she also played My Country 'Tis of Thee, which is set to the tune of the British national anthem. And so after she had finished telling her story, I said, I sort of, interjected myself. And Carol, I said, I would especially like to thank you for playing the British national anthem. Because actually, anymore, I can't remember the words to My Country 'Tis of Thee. But I've now since learned the words of the British national anthem, more or less. No, I've made, I make notes. My next note is, and don't ask me to explain this, is my wife at 40 plays the farce. I have no idea why I was thinking of when I wrote that one down. And then Tony and I got talking about, he's often said that Jerusalem, the song Jerusalem, oh, did these feet and grace, in walk among England's soil green. And he said that really should be the British national anthem because it's sung more often, probably, certainly more widely at sporting events than God Save the Queen or God Save the King, depending on the circumstances. See, when I first heard that the song Jerusalem, I thought of the song my dad called Jerusalem. Well, actually, the proper name for what he called Jerusalem is a piece of sheet music from the early 1900s or late 1890s called The Holy City. And I have, I could find it on the internet, I'm sure, but it was one of the few pieces I learned to play on the piano for my dad. And the refrain is, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, lift up your hearts and sing, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna to our King. And it's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful song. And I always thought that's what was meant when they said Jerusalem, but it's not. It's the oh, did these feet in ancient times walk among England's soil green? There follows some other notes, and perhaps you can imagine the discussions that were their genesis. The mindset is what defines the difference in excellence. Well, we had also been talking about, I haven't talked about this for quite some time, but one of my sort of mottos is, a pro does what he has to do what he has to do. That's in any endeavor. Medicine, law, being in the military, being out on the ocean, anything. Laboring in a ditch somewhere. A pro does what he has to do what he has to do. That means if you hurt like hell in the morning, you get up and do it. That means if you're sick, you get up and do it. That means if you feel, just even if you're in great pain, you get up and do it. You prepare to do it, and then you do it regardless of your physical abilities, up to the limit of your physical abilities. And that means, i.e., when you collapse. There's a difference between people who almost do that and people who do that. A noticeable difference. Always try to make yourself the guy that's going to do it until you collapse. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing. And here's a this note involves, how should we say, it's extreme self-indulgence that is interrupted when the computer starts messing with you. We really are sort of all over the place during these Sunday night conversations. So Paul's napping out in the kitchen, and I've been sort of trying to catch up on my YouTube, but I nearly forgot why I did this in the first place. When I was over at Liz and Henry's the other night, they were kind enough to feed. So it was on Saturday night. They fed us dinner. Very good. I may have mentioned that. Anyway, they did feed us dinner, and hot dogs and bratwurst and corn on the cob and baked beans and deviled eggs and unfortunately, but deliciously and indulgently, bags of Cheetos and Fritos. That's very euphonious, isn't it? Cheetos and Fritos. Cheetos and Fritos. Which I was able to somewhat restrain myself from too many of them. And then 3 good beers. Henry gave me a book that one of his legal colleagues had given him or lent to him, which he wanted me to look at and or read, ideally read, and then return to him, obviously. But it's called Look to Your Left by Jeremy M. Burnside, who is a trial attorney in Portsmouth, Ohio. He's basically a plaintiff's lawyer in tort actions primarily. He's an account of his time in law school. Now I read probably about 90 pages out of this 300-page book, because then, then it starts going into this incredibly, intense anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment, anti-gun ownership riff, and I don't need to listen to that crap. Plus, long before he got to that point, I realized this was just badly written. It's badly written. Now, there might be a reason why this guy, almost flunked out of law school. He doesn't write clearly. He's all over the place. He's unfocused. No, not worth any more of my time. But just in the interest of full honesty here, it's put out by an outfit called Cincinnati Book Publishing out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was published in 2015. I don't recommend it, but some people might find it interesting. It certainly doesn't rise to the level of Scott Turow's 1L, which was his first book, by the way. Or even John. I think John Grisham wrote a book talking about his law school time, and it doesn't. It certainly doesn't approach the level of certainly doesn't approach the level of Scott Turow. And now we have, and this is another sort of throwdown book, Crisis of Character by Gary J. Byrne, and it's about the Clinton White House and the Secret Service in general during his career in the Secret Service. He's the one that testified about, among other people, testified about the cum stain on Monica Lewinsky's dress and so forth. He talks about the ethics of being a federal agent, having to testify in a grand jury setting, when at the time there was a law that said that he couldn't reveal things that even the grand jury was questioning him about. No, it's interesting from just the legal dilemma standpoint, and also just describing how these guys do their job, within the limits of stuff he can reveal and talk about. He later went on to be one of the federal air marshal, and he's now retired. He retired this March. This is published by Center Street out of, I think it's out of New York. By Center Street out of New York, Boston, and Nashville. And it was published, it was just released. It was published in June of 2016. So I would actually more or less recommend this. It's a fast read. I started it last night, and I finished it this morning. So, a book review, some notes from a conversation, some impromptu singing, and a wonderful 4th of July. Thank God we can still have it here. Alrighty. Bye-bye now, YouTubers.